Mark, you sit next to Donald Trump in moments where he talks about conquering Greenland, talks about lashing out at allies like Spain, starting trade wars, things that it doesn't seem like the old Mark Rutte would approve of. Does this have any effect on your self-respect when you sit next to him like that and say nothing?
You know, what I always do is acknowledge when praise is due, and I think we should praise Donald Trump for the fact that NATO is so much stronger. Of course, it has to do with the Russian threat, it has to do with the war in Ukraine, but it very much also has to do with President Trump delivering now what since Eisenhower the United States tried to achieve, equalizing spending between the US and Europe. And it makes Europe stronger. It makes Europe more relevant for the United States as a partner. So that is the transformative character of this summit, of what happened in The Hague, the implementation since The Hague, this summit as a point in time where we take stock. And I think that is extremely important. And when it comes to Greenland, I already explained. We had a meeting in Davos. And I said, I agree with you when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China, gaining access to the High North. But let's do this together. We have NATO for this. Let's work together on this. This is exactly what we are doing.
Okay, we have very little time and still lots and lots of questions. So the woman who's standing here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary General.
Yes, hi.
Amel Akan from the Epoch Times, New York-based media outlet. I have a question on Russia. Russia is facing energy crisis, fuel shortages. The entire country is facing gasoline shortages. How do you see this impacting the war in Ukraine? And do you ask or do you expect President Trump to impose more sanctions on Russia?
Well, clearly, Ukraine is very successful in hitting the energy infrastructure in Russia. In Omsk yesterday, they claimed, and I think the Russians almost, well, I have this from the media, so I didn't get this confirmed from other sources, but I guess you reported this correctly, some of you did, at least yesterday, that they have been successful in striking deep into Russia, which was one of the biggest refinery plants in Russia. And this is part of a pattern over the last 2 months, where the Ukrainians are more and more successful in hitting the vital energy infrastructure in Russia. This is having an impact on people driving cars, ending up at the gasoline stations. There was news yesterday that they had to put out mobile toilets because people had to wait all night for gasoline. Well, I can assure you one thing as a politician. In the 16th, 17th century, you had to make sure there was enough bread. In the 21st century, you have to make sure there's enough gasoline. Your voters don't like it if they cannot fill up their cars. And of course, this is having an impact on the Russian economy. At the same time, you have a Russian president which is willing to sacrifice up to 35,000 of his own young men in this crazy war against Ukraine, totally unprovoked. So again, to any Russian young man listening, if you contemplate joining the war effort, think again. You might be one of those 30 to 35,000 this month, next month, the month after, because your president somehow doesn't care. He is willing to sacrifice you. So this is what is happening. And I know that the US and the European Union, sanctions is not NATO, but the EU and European countries and the US and the United Kingdom are constantly coordinating when it comes to sanctions and to see what can be done.
Okay, I think we have 2 more questions. So the man in the orange tie here in the 6th row.
Hi, Johannes Perterer, Austrian National Television and Radio, ORF. I'm just curious about what NATO, at the end of the day, is really about. We heard a lot about defense spending and about following interests and about hard power politics, let's say. I was wondering also because we find ourselves in an autocracy where journalists are being arrested, what values does NATO represent, if any, and are those values shared by all 32 members? Thank you.
NATO is a defensive alliance, defending 1 billion people living in NATO territory. That's the United States, that's Canada, and 30 countries in Europe. We are defensive. We will never attack another country. Never. We are a defensive alliance, but we will make absolutely sure that if anyone else does not wish us well and tries to attack us, that they know that our reaction will be very forceful, that we can defend ourselves, etc., etc. And that is for a reason. First of all, because I strongly believe in the 21st century that you should not attack another country like the Russians have done with Ukraine. It's kind of crazy to do that. It's a playbook of the 19th century or the 20th century. We don't do this in grown-up democracies anymore in the 21st century. So that's one, but also because there are values at stake. Democracy. And democracy, as I said on Monday, is not only free vote. Democracy is also you, the free media, that you can report, that you can try to find out what happened behind the scenes, politicians not always liking what you find. But if it is fair, hey, it's your role and your job to do that. It's part of democracy. And the third pillar of democracy is that your societies have the ability to make their views known. And they do this sometimes through demonstrations. And that is always should be possible. And that means that journalists should always be able, in person, to participate in big news events.
Okay, final question. That's all we have time for. We're going to go to the fifth row on the aisle here.
Thank you, Secretary General. Satya from...
Yes, hi.
Here. Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, there are more than one hand. Yes.
Satya from NHK, the public TV station of Japan. Thank you. I'd like to ask about the IP4. Do you think it was important to have at least all representatives of all IP4 countries present in Ankara, considering the challenges NATO faces from China? And this is the second year not having all the leaders present at the summit, but do you already have any ideas on how to engage again at the leaders level with them?
Yes, well, the president of the Republic of Korea was here, so I had the opportunity to get to know him better. He and the First Lady participated in a dinner last night, and we had very senior representatives at the level of defense ministers and or foreign ministers of New Zealand, Australia and Japan. So I myself have my engagement with the leaders of these nations, so it's not necessary that always all the leaders are here. I was very happy to meet the Korean president because he is relatively new. We spoke a couple of times on the phone. This gives the opportunity to get to know each other better. And I traveled myself last year to Japan. And I might do other trips to the IP4 countries in the future. Because this is an important relationship. And we said yesterday it is important because this is about the acknowledgement that the two theaters, the Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic, are more and more interconnected. You cannot separate the two. That doesn't mean that you want to extend Article 5 to the Indo-Pacific. That's not the goal. The goal is to work as much together on defense industry, on innovation, on standards, also exchanging views on defense spending, how to do that in the best way. We have now experienced in NATO not to prescribe in detail how many tanks or how many fighter jets, but what should be the battlefield outcomes we want to achieve by each nation's contribution to the collective defense. So this was a very useful discussion. I think we all felt it. Alison, there is one lady over there who really tried for some time. Is it okay if we do one more?
One more.
It's you, and then we stop. Because I think there are other presidents and prime ministers also wanting to address you and get your questions.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Ecem Toplar Haber Global TV. Anti-Turkey rhetoric continues to flow from Greece, which persists in its illegal militarization activities in the Aegean. Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis stated, "My country still faces an open threat of war from Turkey." How are these statements by Greece received within the alliance? Thank you.
Yes, well, I've said before when it came to other issues, sometimes between allies, and that can always happen. We have an alliance of 32 nations, so there might be bilateral discussions, and then obviously, unavoidably, I will get the question, what is my view on this? But of course, I'm not a commentator. I'm there to maintain the unity, at least trying to do my best to maintain the unity of the alliance, and that means that when there are discussions or sometimes irritants between allies, that I do not comment in public, so that I can be behind the scenes, if necessary, if so wanted by any of the discussing countries, helpful.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. It was really great to see you on Monday, to see you today, earlier today. You're amazing. See you next time. Thanks.
Thanks very much.